Good morning. Welcome back to the third on a roll day of the readings of the projections of the astral body by Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington. Thank you so much all for following along. I am on a roll to try and get this book finished as soon as possible, and then open up any discussions, which I'm always open to anyway. As I mentioned in all of the beginning of all the videos, please don't take part in some of the process. Use your common sense, whether in modern day science it is in the best interest of your well-being, and also consider your mental health and your physical health before taking on any kind of process to achieve astral projection. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you could. I would really love to go live on this channel to discuss astral projection, and I would also be grateful just to receive more subscribers. But I do this for the education and the passion of it. I don't do it for fame. Not that I'll ever get to there. Anyway, page 239. So we are finishing on the subconscious mind that visions you imagine concerning projection are perfectly reasonable and possible. We start with, by day, perhaps under active will, you may think of projecting yourself, but will have your doubts as to whether you can do so. But by night, you can always awaken and imagine yourself projecting and have faith that you can do it, just as I had faith at night that I could discharge that shotgun. But had my doubts during the day when under active will. That determined, that extreme will which we have when we awaken in the dead of night, conscious but drowsy, is the will which promotes the projection of the astral body. Use it to obtain results. Try to awaken at a certain hour, say at 3 o'clock every morning, and if your desire for projection be sufficiently strong, your imaginative will dwell upon that desire. Use no effort of will, just allow the will and the imagination concerned in the projection to take their course, and fall to sleep again during the process. Do this for several nights in succession, and soon strange things will begin to happen about this hour in the morning. Page 240. The results produced by dynamization of projection. If you believe that you have your mind sufficiently dynamized with the desire to project, and if your belief is correct, one of the following things should occur. 1. You should dream of a projection of the astral body. 2. You should somnambulate physically. One of the indications is to awaken and find yourself getting out of bed. 3. You should awaken in the night with the desire upon your mind. 4. You should experience a conscious projection. If none of these manifestations occur, there is but one explanation. Either you only imagined that your mind was dynamized with the desire, or else you were experiencing unconscious astral projections. And let me tell you this, unconscious astral projections is a common occurrence. I believe that no one has any idea of how really common unconscious astral projection is. It is my firm belief that for every case of physical somnambulism, there are a dozen astral projections of the unconscious type. I have experienced many conscious astral projections, and I have no idea how many times I have been unconsciously projected. Yet I have, so far as I know, only experienced 2 or 3 physical somnambulisms in my life. As to the 4 different results which dynamization of the desire to project in the astral body should produce, first, should you dream of the projection of the astral body, at once try one of the methods for causing it to awaken when you reach a certain place. Second, if you somnambulate physically, you have not yet induced the proper degree of incapacity of the physical body, so you must reduce the heartbeat still more, and then, when the subconscious will decides to project the body, the physical body will not respond instantly and will be left behind. Third, should you awaken in the dead of night with the desire in your mind, exert your passive will upon this desire, your imaginative will, and rise to sleep under the influence of this imaginative will. Also, be sure that you induce complete bodily passivity before going to sleep, so that you may awaken in the astral catalepsy. Fourth, you should find that none of the first three occurrences takes place. You have either a lack of desire, stress, or are undergoing unconscious projections. In this case, suggest to yourself on retiring that you will henceforth awaken at 3 o'clock every morning. If this does not awaken you, use an alarm until you can form the habit of awakening at the proper time. Lie awake in the silence of the night, conscious but drowsy, and allow your passive will to work upon the desire to project. Continue this night after night until the habit of doing so is established. Then, on retiring at night, induce greater bodily passivity by slowing down the speed of the heart. This is one of the methods I tried with fair success, remaining conscious from the beginning. With my mind dynamized with the idea of projection, I would retire at night and reduce the heartbeat considerably before going to sleep. Often it would be beating about 30 pulsations per minute before sleep came on, and this would, of course, make it still slower when sleep did overtake me. Then I would awaken at a certain hour in the night, and if I did not find myself without motivity, I would allow my passive will to take its course, and could sometimes produce a projection upon entering sleep again. But if I did find that I was lacking in motivity, I would lie perfectly at the ease of only moving upward into the room away. As a rule, the astral body will be found to separate from the physical before the subject awakens, as it did in my case many times. When trying this method, aside from the conscious from the beginning cases, there is still another method which I have found to be good, very good in fact, and probably the most pleasant experience I've ever had was obtained by this method. My mind being dynamized with a desire to project, I would awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, and while laying awake, conscious but drowsy, I would think of projecting and of waking in the room of one of my friends, some distance from home. I would lie there, passive, my imaginative will working upon this desire, and finally go to sleep with this in mind. And it worked. I had only repeated this process about 1 week when I awoke in my friend's room instead of in my physical body. She was at the time asleep, and after standing there watching her for a while, I departed. You may say, why didn't you try and awaken her while you were there? But I, in turn, would ask you this. What good would it have done to try the same old experiment of making contact with things physical? I have tried that so many times, without success, that in my mind it seems but a waste of time, when there are so many other things to see and experience while one has the chance to do so. I had often told my friend about projection of the astral body and explained it to her, but although she would listen, she always had her doubts. After I discovered this relatively easy method of projecting the astral body to her side, I hit upon a plan which I hoped would get results, and convince her that I really could project my astral body. I wanted very much to convince her, and cared not whether anybody else believed me or not. Page 242, some typical projections. So we agreed upon this plan. Both of us were to awaken at 2 o'clock and lie awake, conscious but drowsy. I was to think of projecting myself into her room. She was to visualize my doing so. I hope by this method to use not only my own powers of projection, but also to utilize her psychic force to assist me. We were to allow our passive wills to work upon our desires in the dead of night at the same time. Several weeks passed, and during this time I succeeded in projecting myself into her room several times, and becoming conscious when there. But I had no recollection of having travelled the intervening distance. In other words, I remained unconscious until the time when I awakened. On one occasion, when I awakened, she was awake too, but she did not see me. A queer thing did happen, however. I decided on the next occasion to do certain things, which I would not tell her, and see if she could describe to me what I did, provided she admitted seeing me. I accordingly went over to her dresser, put my hand upon her hairbrush, walked over to her and put my hand upon her shoulder, and stood there for a few moments, then went back and placed my hand upon the hairbrush, then back again to her, etc., repeating this about a dozen times. All the time she was apparently sleeping. The next day I inquired if she had seen me in her room. No, was the reply, but I dreamed that you were there. What did you dream? I asked her. I dreamed that you were trying to brush my hair, she replied, and that you kept running back and forth trying to find the comb, and that I kept telling you it was on the dresser. I concluded that this was very nearly a complete success, even though she were but dreaming. However, attempts on her part to me seemed to be unsuccessful. And then, what do you suppose happened? I had a dream of being in her room, evidently a partially conscious projection, as I did not recall having the dream until the next day when I met her. And she stated that she had seen me there. Nothing would convince her that she had not seen me. Of course, the theory of thought forms might be advanced to account for this, but then it is no greater miracle for the astral body to be a spot than for a thought form to be created and seen. If the astral phantom can project by night and influence the thoughts of others at a distance, is it not possible that many persons have committed crimes as a result of some criminal phantom hovering near them while they sleep and influencing their minds to commit a crime? It is certainly possible. The idea that dreams are all caused by events met with prior states of conscious everyday life, which are recorded in the subconscious mind, is pure fallacy. Phantoms of the dead and of the living, thoughts of the dead and of the living, can bring about dreams and also influence the minds of individuals, the latter being quite aware of the fact. And here is another point. Suppose one should project in his astral body by night and enter a house belonging to someone else, and that someone residing in that house should see the phantom. Do you suppose that you could induce the ordinary individual to believe that the phantom thus projected was that of an earthly, living person like himself, who was but sleeping somewhere? Hardly. And if the projected phantom were unconscious, this seer would say that the spirit he saw walked right past him, without paying any attention to his being there. Thus there are many ways of accounting for haunted house phenomena. And, further, if the projected phantom were unconscious, why might it not be influenced by thoughts and of those residing in the house, and do the things which these individuals conceived it doing? Might not telepathy exercise a control over the phantom's mind? I think it highly probable. For example, while I was dreaming of being in my friend's room at the time she thought she saw me there, might not in her mind have instigated the dream which I'd had of being there in my mind. In any case, that is what happened on that occasion, and she stated that I came into the room through the wall just as she was about to go to sleep, and that I paid no attention to her as I walked about the room, finally passing out through the wall again. As time passed, with the cares of duties of everybody in existence, our experimenting dropped into insignificance, but since then I have awakened several times in her room, by using the passive will, the imaginative will to do so, and at other times during unintentional projections. Why not try this experiment? Therefore, if there are no reasons why you cannot try it, arrange with someone of whom you are fond and who in turn is affectionately disposed towards you. Both should awaken at a given hour in the night, and lying awake, conscious but drowsy, allow your conscious passive wills to operate upon the desire. The one who is to project must desire to be at the side of the seer, must visualize himself moving upward out of the physical and speeding through the air to the seer's side, and the seer must imagine the projector doing so at the same time. But do not forget to use your passive will, your imaginative will. Go to sleep using the passive will. The greater the affection which exists between the projector and the seer, the greater the harmony and the greater the will be the desire. And as a mere experiment, some day, when you are away from someone you love, on going to bed at night, use your imaginative will and desire to come back to him, come back to him or her. Oh, I've got a tickle in my throat, I apologise. Visualizing yourself moving upward out of the physical body just as you are entering sleep. Another factor which will aid in this experiment is that the astral body usually is under the inclination to move back to the place where it is in the habit of residing, and also moves with much more ease from a strange place to a familiar place. I have taken the following accounts, which are similar to those which I had just given from Carrington's True Ghost Stories. Here is a case of this nature, experienced by the English investigator, the Reverend Will Staton Moses, who corroborates the following account, which is furnished by the agent. One evening I resolved to appear to Z at some miles' distance. I had not informed him beforehand of the intended experiment, but had retired to rest shortly after midnight, my thoughts intently fixed upon Z, with whose rooms and surrounding I was quite acquainted. I was quite unacquainted. I soon fell asleep, and woke next morning unconscious of anything having taken place. On seeing Z a few days later, I inquired, "Did anything happen at your rooms on Saturday night?" "Yes," he replied, "a great deal happened. I had been sitting over the fire with M, smoking and chatting. About 12:30 he arose to leave, and I let him out myself. I turned to the fire to finish my pipe, when I saw you sitting in the chair just vacated by him. I looked intently at you, and then took upon a newspaper to assure myself that I was not dreaming, but on laying it down again I saw you still there. While I gazed, without speaking, you faded away." Some occultists would contend that the foregoing case might readily be accounted for as a thought form, that is, that the will of the person who determined to appear was so powerful that it created his form at the place. But as for me, I have undergone too many of these experiments and these experiences, while conscious, ever to accept that the thought form theory, although I admit it a possibility. Just why experimenters should try to discard one seeming miracle by substituting another is beyond me. Is the astral body theory more difficult to accept than the thought form theory? Here is a typical unconscious astral projection. Another explanation advanced is that by means of telepathy, a person might impress his thoughts upon the mind of another, in some instant place, so strongly that the latter would have been a telepathic hallucination, and believed that he saw the agent there. I shall discuss how the mind can create thought forms later. In the case which follows, the initials only are used, but the writer of the account, who was known to the officers of the SPR, who vouch for the general trustworthiness of the writer. Okay, excuse me. Please take my apologies. On a certain Sunday evening in November 1881, having been reading of the great power which the human will is capable of exercising, I determined with the whole force of my being that I would be present in spirit in the front bedroom of the second floor of a house situated at 22 Hogarth Road, Kingston, in which a room slept two young ladies of my acquaintance, namely Miss LSV and Miss ECV, aged respectively 25 and 11 years. I was living at the time at 23 Kildare Gardens, a distance about 3 miles from Hogarth Road, and I had not mentioned in any way my intention of trying this experiment to either of the above ladies, for the simple reason that it was only on retiring to rest upon this Sunday night that I made up my mind to do so. The time at which I determined to be there was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had a strong intention of making my presence perceptible. On the following Thursday I went to see the ladies in question, and in the course of my conversation, without any allusion to the subject on my part, the elder one told me that on the previous Sunday night she had been much terrified by perceiving me standing by her bedside, and that she screamed when the apparition advanced towards her, and I awoke her little sister, who also saw me. I asked her if she was awake at the time, and she replied most decidedly in the affirmative, and, upon my inquiring the time of the occurrence, she replied, about 1 o'clock in the morning. This lady, at my request, wrote down a statement of the event, and signed it. Mr. Gurney, one of the authors of The Phantasms of Living, became deeply interested in these experiments and requested Mr. B to notify him in advance of the next occasion when he proposed to make his presence known in this strange manner. Accordingly, March 22, 1884, he received the following letter. Dear Mr. Gurney, I am going to try the experiment tonight of making my presence perceptible at 44 Moreland Square at 12 p.m. I will let you know of the results in a few days. The next letter, which was written on April 3rd, contained the following statement prepared by the recipient, Miss L.S. Verity. On Saturday night, March 22nd, 1884, at about midnight, I had a distinct impression that Mr. S.H.B. was present in my room, and I distinctly saw him being quite awake. He came toward me and stroked my hair. I voluntarily gave him this information when he called to see me on Wednesday, April 2nd, telling him the time and the circumstance of the apparition without any suggestion on his part. The appearance in my room was most vivid and quite unmistakable. Miss A.S. Verity also furnishes this corroborative statement. I remember my sister telling me that she had seen S.H.B. and that he touched her hair before he came to see us on April 2nd. The agent's statement of the affair is as follows. On Saturday, March 22nd, I determined to make my presence perceptible to Miss V. at 44 Moreland Square, Notting Hill, at 12 midnight, and as I had previously arranged with Mr. Gurney that I should post him a letter of the evening on which I tried my next experiment, stating the time and other particulars. I sent him a note to acquaint him with the above facts. About 10 days afterward I called upon Miss V., and she voluntarily told me that on March 22nd, at 12 o'clock midnight, she had seen me so vividly in her room, whilst wide awake, and that her nerves had been much shaken, and she had been obliged to send for a doctor in the morning. Experiences such as these might be passed off as telepathic hallucinations, but to my way of thinking, each example given is a typical unconscious projection of the astral body. Do you know how long it takes the astral body to speed to a distant place and come back again into the zone of quietude while the subject sleeps? Just about 1/10,000th of the time which it takes you to think about it. Wow, that is something that I didn't know. When a projected phantom is conscious at the same place and distance, how is such an event to be explained? By the telepathic hallucination theory or by the astral body theory? The foregoing are all typical examples of the method I have just given, the passive will method of projection of the astral body. Through passive will, imaginative will, many of those who have been classed as dreamers have performed very unusual feats, some good and some bad. The fact that they were dreamers has been pointed out empathically. The reason they have been enabled to accomplish the very unusual is because they have allowed their passive wills to work upon the very thing which they wish to accomplish, even though they did so unconsciously, and their passive wills subject to them an extreme stress, which when it did burst forth produced extreme results. If you wish to guard yourself from doing evil, you must not only govern your active thoughts, but your passive thoughts, and especially your imaginative will as well. And if you wish to accomplish the unusual, you must not only use your active will, but your imaginative will. That is how to develop this extreme stress in the mind, but by desiring to project to a certain place or person, by awakening in the dead of night and using your passive will upon desire, and going to sleep again with the desire dominating the mind in this extreme manner. If you could keep this up nightly for a period of several months, you would soon find that your subconscious mind needed no other stress than the desire to project in order to cause you to do so, and you would be enabled to project merely by reducing your heartbeat. Upon retiring for the night and thinking about the place or person to whom you wish to be projected. I've done this many times, merely giving myself one single suggestion, to project to a certain place. On going to bed and during the night, I would find myself projected to that particular place. Okay, thank you for following along. We're finishing on page 248. and we will be continuing on the crypto conscious mind, which is chapter 13. We are nearly done. So yes, I'm excited to hopefully get another video uploaded tomorrow, and then we will be on our way to the sacred mushroom and the cross. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and much love. Have a wonderful day or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.